Hola Nadine.
Hola, ¿qué tal?
Muy bien, gracias.
I'm glad that you could make it today, or I don't know where most of you are located. So I'm here in the Philippines, while Daryl is in Madrid.
Some of them are in
Part.
Madrid as well, and some parts of
Okay.
Spain.
Yeah, so there's quite a bit of time difference, but I'm glad that, there were people who could make it to this event. I've actually prepared a PowerPoint for this, so the presentation is going to be much more focused. And if you have any questions, okay, then you can ask me. Okay, so I just took the title of the event, which is Road to Spanish Proficiency in Spanish Language Learning Journey. So yeah, for me, learning a new language is kind of like a journey. So you take some steps, and the destination can be different depending on the person. Okay, and it's mostly up to you to figure out what you want to get out of learning another language. So today we're going to focus on Spanish. Okay, so why Spanish? Is it worth it to learn Spanish? Of course, I'm pretty sure most of you will say yes. Okay, so just a glimpse on how I began my Spanish learning journey. So I started learning Spanish around 2008. So it's been more than 10 years, no más de 10 años. Due to other things going on at the time, I wasn't able to consistently sign up for courses. At this point, I was already working, you know, and I had just graduated from college. Even back then, I was already interested in learning Spanish, but I just didn't have the time and the money to do it. Okay. Spanish seemed to be the most logical choice, given that one, we have a lot of Spanish vocabulary in our language already, or I mean in Tagalog, because it's my native language. And number two, it seemed to be the most accessible and the most practical. Yeah. Just a fun anecdote. When I was a young kid, my mom used to buy me a lot of books, and she bought me three dictionaries, and they were all very complex languages. None of them was Spanish, so I had Japanese, Arabic, and Chinese. So they were like bilingual dictionaries. But I think in a way, yeah, that sparked an interest. Okay, so once things cleared up, I began to continue my learning and was able to progress both inside and outside the classroom. So I think this is important, especially if you're one of the learners who are doing formal classes, and you might think that your progress is heavily dependent on the classroom learning. So actually, even outside the classroom, you can advance with your language learning. So here are some reasons why learning Spanish can be advantageous. Number one, I think as of now, it's the fourth language in the world with most speakers. I think it used to be second, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
not sure now. I think anyway, there's English, Mandarin right now, and I
Mandarin.
think Hindi, then
Mm-hmm.
Spanish comes in fourth. Um, there's a growth of job opportunities for bilinguals or multilinguals, including here in the Philippines. And of course, it's also great for your personal growth. Okay. So you might be asking, okay,
Hmm.
so what are some of the things that I can do
Hmm.
to learn, to advance in my language learning? Okay, so number one, this is very important. Find materials that interest you. Okay. So this can be anything from songs, podcasts, books, or series. And this is very important because if you're bored with the material, you're not gonna get far. You're not gonna get very far. You're just gonna associate it as, or you're just gonna think of it as something tedious, and that's gonna stop you in your journey. Okay. And then number two, connect with others who share the same goal. So language learning can be much better if you interact with other people. In essence, make it a communicative process. And I think this is true for a lot of other activities. Like it's fun. It's much more fun if you can find a community and a group of people that have the same interest. And since language is all about being able to communicate, it's also great if you can practice with other people instead of just learning it by yourself. Okay. Number three, find language models. Okay, language learning is, for the most part, a process of imitation. So when I think about this, I remember the time when I was learning English and I was acquiring it. And as most of you, I'm not sure about your experiences, but I think a lot may be able to relate when we say that we don't necessarily had to learn all of the grammar rules, right? We just got exposed to like English media, songs, right? So it's all about imitating. Like how do the speakers, the native speakers of this language, use it when they actually communicate. So you have to be able to find a language model that could help a lot. And then number four, make it a habit. So this is important. It's important to incorporate it into your everyday life. So when you're learning a new language, it can be easy to think of it as something separate. Like, okay, on Mondays and Wednesdays, I have a language class. But outside of that, you don't really use it or you don't get exposed to it. So you have to create a connection with the language. When in a country that speaks your target language, don't fall into the trap of the language bubble. So what do I mean by this? I don't know, but have you ever noticed that there are lots of foreigners that come to the Philippines and they don't necessarily ever learn how to speak any of the local languages? So yeah, that's a lot of that is down to the language bubble. Like most of them can get by with speaking English, so they're not forced, to actually learn the native languages or the local languages. And that can also happen, like let's say if you're in a Spanish speaking country, where foreigners are catered to in English, or where you find other people from your country. So yeah, it's easy to become complacent and just say, okay, you'll just limit yourself to communicating in the languages you already know, while limiting your use of your target language to situations where it's just very necessary. Okay, so you have to go out of your comfort zone. And then last one, enjoy. Just enjoy the process. Language learning can be stressful for some, but this is quite unfortunate because stress can slow down the learning process and create aversion. So it's important to find positive experiences to connect to learning and to acquire language at your own pace. So don't be too pressured. There's a very useful illustration that I came across, and it's one in which involves building a house. Like if you build a house made of bricks, right? So think of language learning as building your house brick by brick. So when you put on a layer of cement, you don't necessarily stack them up quickly. You have to give time for the foundation to settle. Then you just keep stacking, but you have to give it time. Okay, so that's also the same when you learn a new language. Give yourself time to acquire the new knowledge. Okay, don't be too pressured to go too fast or to master it all at once. Okay, so my experience. What were some of the materials or activities that helped me? Okay, listening to podcasts. I am a huge fan of horror or comedy. So I remember that when my language learning was at its peak, as far as formal classes were concerned, I was working night shift. So when you're working night shift, at some point you'll get sleepy, tired, and bored. So my go-to in order to wake myself up was to listen to horror, something scary, or comedy, anything funny. So those were the things that perked me up. And I thought, okay, so why not listen to them in Spanish, right? And then Radio Nacional España. Um, I had some programs that I listened to, like Gente Despierta. So Gente Despierta, it's kind of a wordplay because this used to air late night in Spain, I think, or early morning at dawn. So it means people who are awake, but I think it also means like people who are intelligent, despierta. Okay, this one should be No es un día cualquiera. Okay, La Noche en Vela. So yeah, I like these programs because they're very informative. They don't just play music. They actually have topics that they discuss with other guests, segments. So that was very helpful. And then Notes in Spanish. This one helped me when I was in the intermediate stage. This is a podcast that was created by two people, Ben and Marina. And actually now they are married with a kid. So that ended pretty well. Notes in Spanish is actually not just a podcast, they provide materials. So there's a transcript of the dialogue. And then they also give you a list of vocabulary at the end and some exercises. So the audio is free. You just have to buy the transcripts, but it depends. It depends on you whether you want to buy them or not. And then Radio Ambulante. Okay, so if you want something that's more focused on stories centering around Latin America, this is one of the best places to go to. So they have lots of episodes already, and actually even now they're still producing lots of episodes. So you can go there, and they cover a lot of topics from social to political to economic. Okay, talking with native speakers. All right, so one of the resources that helped me with this was italki. Again, I'm not an endorser for any of these materials. I'm just sharing what helped me. So what is italki? I'm pretty sure most of you have heard of it. So italki is a platform where you can find professors in your target language. And the good thing about this is that it's at your own pace. You can schedule lessons when you feel like you need them or when it's convenient for you. And the prices are very affordable. So that is what drew me to italki. And that helped a lot. Actually, there are two kinds of teachers, I think. Those who are offering like lessons that are standard lessons. And then there are those who are there if you just need to practice speaking, like casual conversation. So you have options. Okay, the Club de Lectura in Instituto Cervantes, Manila. So this is something that is quite close to my heart because actually now the Club de Lectura no longer exists. Okay. It was actually an initiative by the head librarian at the time, which is Carlos Balmaceda. Actually, he's back now. But as you know, Instituto Cervantes changed headquarters. So the library is much smaller now. It's not as easy to hold meetings there. But what we did before was we were given stories, and we would be assigned segments. So we would read them, and the next meeting we would talk about, we would explain the segment or the part that we read, and we would be giving our interpretation, and others could comment, and vice versa. It was a good way, it was a good practice for us to just contribute our ideas, and it was open for mostly anyone. People didn't have to be advanced learners, or they didn't have to be fluent. They just had to be interested in literature and meeting other people who are learning or who were also learning Spanish. Okay, next one, watching series. Okay, so if you have Netflix, all right, maximize it. One of the latest that I watched was Hit. So I'm not sure if you've heard of it. Maybe. I hear it's pretty popular in Spain right now, I think. So it's about the educational system and this one guy who's trying to make a change, right? So I like it. I like the plot. I like the message. And again, it helps me to observe how native speakers communicate amongst themselves. There's another one, Aquino Ike and Viva. I think this is a very old series, but it's comedy. It's about people in the same building, living in the same building, neighbors who are nosy, so all the funny things that can happen when you try to get along with your neighbors. And then Plaza España. So I think this had something more to do with the Civil War period. Okay, so yeah, this is also comedy. You can look this up in RTV. So Hit, I think, is in Netflix, or I think it's also in RTV. Okay, songs. Yeah, I also like songs as a means of learning language. Some of my favorite artists are people like Ricardo Arjona, for example. Okay, even songs by Shakira, you'll find some of her songs that are pretty good, some which are more like ballads. Okay? So yeah, it's really up to your taste. What kind of songs will draw you? But they can be helpful because with the melody and the rhythm, again, if you feel very much drawn to the theme of the song, for example, then it can stick in your mind. Okay, you can also try switching your social media, your phone, etc. to Spanish. Okay, but be careful though. Always make sure you know how to switch the language back to your native because when I was starting out and I did this with one of my phones, and this was way back, hace mucho tiempo. I was like, okay, how to switch this back? I don't understand everything yet. So just be sure you have a backup plan. Okay. And then I also reflected on how I learned English and started from there. So yeah, I was like, just to put this in context, when I was learning Spanish in formal classes, I got until B1, like nivel 13. And so it might be surprising because I was able to pass the C1, C2, but my formal learning is really just until nivel 13 or 14. That's it.
Nadine, can I cut you a little bit? So probably some of the learners here, they don't really know like the scale. Obviously, since we're teachers, or most of them have heard of A1, A2. So maybe you can tell them that something about B1. Like what is B1, por ejemplo?
Okay. All right. So just to give context for those who might not be familiar with the scale. So we have A1, A2. So those are the beginners. B1, B2, so that's intermediate. And then C1, C2, that's the advanced. I got until B1, which is like lower intermediate, formal classes. And then after that, a lot of my compañeros, they had other plans. And as you know, there's usually an expected or a required number of students, right, for them to open classes. And in Instituto Cervantes de Manila, that was like 8 hasta 10, so 8 to 10. If you have fewer students in that, then they couldn't open the class or the course. And so that happened to me repeatedly after nivel 13 or 14. I would enroll in the next course, and they would always tell me the day before the course opening that they were canceling the class because there were not enough students. And so I was stuck for quite a long time, like maybe for over a year. And it got very frustrating because I felt like my Spanish was stagnating, right? And it was very hard to find students who were interested in enrolling for such advanced courses. So I said to myself, there has to be another way. This does not have to limit me. And I said, okay, so what other foreign languages do I know? Okay, obviously English. And, I recall thinking I didn't necessarily have to like master everything in English, right? Even before I finished my education, before I went to high school, I already had a good proficiency in English. So not to brag, but yeah, I mean, I didn't have any difficulty with it at all. And so I said, okay, so how did I learn? And yeah, that's when I realized, okay, so I did this mostly through observing and acquiring the language
by watching how native speakers spoke and communicated in their native language. So yeah, that's what I did. I said, okay, so maybe what I need is to bring the Spanish classes to me. All right. So if I can't go to the Spanish classes, I'll bring them to me. I'll find the materials, I'll set my schedule, okay, and I'll plan out my strategy. So yes, it's very possible to still learn Spanish even if you can't attend formal classes.